Oh, so do let me know if you guys are able to see my screen. Okay, you guys are able to see my screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So we started discussion about the Spring Core module, right? Spring Core module is having its own self-containers. They have provided their own self-containers. Using these self-containers, we are going to manage all the classes, whichever you implement for your application. When you implement classes for your application, as a POSO classes you need to write. As a simple plain Java class you need to write. Any Java class which is not extending or not implementing from any API, we can call it as a POSO class, a simple Java class. For your controller class, business coding, and DAO, database operations, right? Whatever you write, everything you can consider it as a POSO. So combination of multiple POSOs will become a Spring Boot application. Like combination of controllers, business, and DAOs will become a Spring application. Okay, so we run that Spring application classes on Spring IOC. Okay, IOC is a container, inversion of controlling container, inversion of control. We call it as inversion of control. IOC means we will talk about this inversion of control. Okay, so all the POSO classes we configure in a XML file and we load that XML into IOC container so that your container will create objects and it will manage life cycles. Okay, the primary focus should be on how it will create all the objects. Okay, how it will create all the objects, in how many styles it will create the object, we need to understand first. Okay, how it will create objects, and before life cycles, right, we have many other features that we will discuss, then we go to life cycles. Okay, so primarily we need to understand all this. Why? Because while doing implementation of your classes, you should know what all are features your container is going to provide. You need to understand what all features this container is going to provide so that you can utilize that features for your implementation. Okay, instead of writing a simple, by following your simple object oriented principles, instead of writing a plain Java classes here, you can utilize the features which container is providing. So for that reason, you need to understand about your IOC container so that you can utilize all that features which is having by your IOC. Okay, so as a first step, we thought to understand how it will create objects. Okay, so as I said, this IOC, we have two container classes, bean factory, application context. Using this bean factory or application context, we can able to load our XML file, and this XML file will have all our POSO classes or all our bean classes configuration in it. So that when we load this XML, yesterday we understand, right? This bean factory or application context, we understand how to start it. Okay, if it is a bean factory, we use XML bean factory. If it is a application context, we use class path XML application context. There we load our XML file. We understand that to call your container, right, in a main method, we create object for that container class and we load XML file. So we understand that once loading the XML file, how its life cycle will start, how container will start, how container behavior will start. Okay, so when we load XML file, when we load the XML file into our container class as a first step, what will happen when you start this code, right? You put this under a main method. You put this one single line statement under main method, and the main method is required in Java to start with it. Okay, to start any Java application, a main method is required. So how many classes completed till now? Yeah, we completed 4 demo sessions. Okay, and actual about containers we started yesterday only. The same thing we are discussing now. Okay, So we started with the actual Spring core module. Under core module, we started discussing about containers. And the previous session recordings are available already in YouTube. Okay, they are available in YouTube. I'll share you that link. Even in your demo link, right, which is shared there also, you can see. Okay, fine. So when we load this XML file, basically this XML file will have all our bean classes, all controllers, as I said, right? Your business classes and DO classes, everything we configure under this XML only. So when we load this XML file, first thing, it will check whether this XML file tags are correctly placed or not, it will check. So once after checking your tags, it will validate the tags, whether the tag you created XML tag perfectly, but the tag is not there in the DTD. How it will treat the tag? It will treat the tag as an invalid tag. Okay, so basically you need to put right tags here, which are there in the DTD or XSD. Spring framework given this rule through the DTD or XSD, so that they are somehow controlling you putting unnecessary tags here. Okay, only the tags which they want as part of their framework, they mentioned here in this DTD. You need to use those tags only for your XML. Okay. So using XML, we understand there is a main root tag beans tag. Under this beans tag, we have a bean tag. Under this bean tag, we configure all our classes, whatever you implement for your application. Consider for your application, you implemented A class, B class, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, N number of classes. Consider you implemented L, M, N, O. Okay, N number of classes you implemented here for your application. Consider all these classes. Consider all these are classes that you implemented for your application. All these classes you are going to configure under your Spring XML file by using bean tag. By using bean tag, you are going to configure all your classes. Consider if all these are classes. If you consider all these as classes, all these classes you should configure under your XML file. Which XML file? Spring XML file. Each class you need to configure under a XML file. So we using which tag you need to configure this ABCD classes? Using a bean tag. Using bean tag you need to configure all the classes A to Z, whatever you implemented, right? All the classes you need to configure under XML file. For each class you need to use one bean tag. It is not possible to use only one bean tag for all classes. Okay, for each class you need to use one bean tag. For A class, one bean tag. For B, one bean. For C, for D, E, like that, up to whatever number of classes you have, right? For all that classes you need to use one bean tag inside beans tag. Like in servlets, right? If you have a number of servlets, for each servlet we configure one servlet and one servlet mapping tag. Similar way, here for each class we use one bean tag. Okay, if you have 100 classes, 100 bean tags, you need to configure. Okay, and how you configure it? So yesterday we implemented a class A. Like this, you can implement these, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, N number of classes. For each class, as I said, right, in your XML file, first you need to start like this. You implemented a class. So here you implemented a class. Consider you have implemented class A. Then what you need to do? You need to create one XML file. Under that XML file, you need to place DTD first. Then you need to keep one root tag here. Start root tag, end the root tag. Between these tags, between this root tag, you need to configure one bean tag. Under bean tag, we have an attribute name called class. Under that class, you need to configure your class name. How to configure your package name dot class name. That's it. Finally, you need to load this XML. Finally, you need to load this XML into your application context. This is how we create object. We understand, right? Application context is a interface. As we cannot able to create objects for interface, there is a implementation class for this interface. So there is a implementation class. So this is the implementation class for this interface, class path XML application context. There we load our XML file, whichever number of beans you configured here, right? So that XML we load here. So once we start it, what will happen? Your tags will be validated. Then next, it will start creating objects. This is the first main important step. It will execute. It will start creating objects. It will start creating objects for all your beans, whichever you configured here. If you configure A to Z, right, n number of beans, it will start creating beans objects, A class object, B class object, C class object. It will start create. How it will create objects during runtime? Generally, we know how to create objects during compilation time, right? Class name reference equal to new keyword we use, and we call a constructor. That is how we create object. But these frameworks will create objects during runtime, right? They will read your class, each class name, and they pass that class name into this one, class.forName, and they will call new instance method, so that they can able to create object. So this is how internally your object will be created, whatever beans you configure, right? That beans objects will created by loading your class into class.forName. By using new instance, it will create object. Reflection API they will use. The advantage with this reflection API is, right? So during runtime, they can able to create any object. If you don't want A class, you can remove A class here and you can configure B class. Whatever class you configure, that class object only it will create during runtime, so that easily you can modify your XML file. So if you don't want this class, you can remove this class, you can discard this class from your application, and you can add a new class, right? Without affecting, you need to put your configurations that we discuss later. Okay, so the benefit with XML based configuration is anytime you can change your classes from XML file. So will it not affect your application? Will it not affect your application if you configure multiple classes here? So as I'm saying, if you want to discard E class in future, you can remove it. But if there is any class that is using this E class, if this E class using in F, and if this E class using in G and D and C, those classes compulsory will affect. Without affecting that, we need to write when we discard a class. Okay, we'll talk about that topic later. Okay, so even if you discard a class and if you replace with a new class also, your application should not affect. How? That we discuss later. Okay, we call that as a runtime polymorphism. As in this context, what I'm saying, you need to configure your bean classes here, right? Your implementation classes, whatever number of classes you have decided for your application, whatever number of classes you implemented, all that classes you need to configure using bean tags. And finally, you need to load. When you load, for each of your class, it will create object by using this approach. I told you, right, in yesterday's example, this approach is providing runtime object. During runtime, it is creating object. Even if your class is having private constructor also, Spring is accessing it. By using reflection API, it is accessing it. Okay, I don't want to go in depth. Okay, we'll stop there itself. I'll show you that example once again. Let me switch to our workspace. Okay, this is the workspace we are using. Just we are talking about how to create object. As a Java developer, we should be well aware of it, how to create object, because always we deal with objects only. So we should be well aware in how many ways we can create objects. Okay, so the first thing that we discussed is, without Spring, if you want to create objects during runtime, I have given an example here. So I have a student class here. For this student class, I want to create object to call this say hello method. So to call that say hello method in main method class, under main method, I'm using this approach. Instead of using student, new student, This is how you should create in general. This is how you will create. Okay. But during runtime, if you want to create objects, this is not the right way. Okay. Even if you can't able to access private constructors, right? If you have any private constructor, you cannot able to access it as it is a private member. But if you use a reflection API, you can able to do it. Okay. So using class.forName, I am loading my class here, and by using this class reference, whatever return I will get from here, right? Using this one, I can get the declared constructors array here. If you have number of constructors in your student class, you will get all that constructors. I'm saying give access to this private constructor. Okay, so there is a one constructor. So that's why confidently I'm calling constructor of 0, set accessible to true. So here I'm making it private to public, private to public. So your constructor will become public now, private to public. We are converting it using this statement. Then I'm calling give me a new instance, give me a new instance, so that it will create object for your student class. So the same object I'm typecasting and calling say hello method. Run it. This is how you can create objects during runtime. See, hello everyone is able to print by creating object of your student class. You must be curious here why we are writing this number of lines. If I don't write this many number of lines, I cannot able to create object for student class, because the student class constructor is a private constructor. So basically, to create object for any class, you need to call the constructor. But to call the constructor, we locked it by using private, so that you cannot able to call it. Without creating object for this class, I cannot able to call say hello method. That's why I use this approach. Using this reflection approach, I created object, and finally I can able to call say hello method. Finally, I can able to call say hello method. So you are clear, right? This is simple Java runtime approach. Okay, by using reflection API, I did that. Same thing we have started by using Spring also. Okay, in Spring, how to do that? So consider you have a class A here. Again, this class A also is having a private constructor, but I want to create this class object by using Spring. As I said, right? Complete application we implement. For complete application we implement many classes using Spring only. Plain Java classes would be enough. Okay, consider this is a class, one of it. I have a private constructor for this class, and to create this class object, you need to configure that class first into Spring XML file. As I said, first you need to put DTD in your XML file, then main root tag. Under the root tag, you need to configure child tag name called bean. For each class, you need to configure one bean, and the class name you should configure here. Package name dot your class name. Once after that, you need to load your XML into main method again. Under main method, I'm using application context. This is the interface and this is the implementation. This is how in Java you can create object. Class name reference equal to class name, or else interface. This class interface only, not all the interfaces. Okay, so the interface reference equal to new implementation class also you can put. So here I'm reading my Spring XML file from this resources package, from this resources directory, so that I'm using this slash between, so that it will go to this folder and it will read this Spring XML file. So while loading the Spring XML file itself, what it will do, it will start creating object for your A class. So A class constructor is called, which means if for your A class object is created. Okay, A class object is created, then how you will access that object? Object is created, fine. Spring is created object. How you will get it? Okay, we'll talk about that here. Okay, as a next step, we understand how it is creating object, how you will access that object. How to access that object. How to access the object. Object is created, how you can get it? Okay, so what you need to do is here, what you need to do, as you use this statement, right? For loading your XML and creating object. So how to get object means once after loading your XML file, right? After this step, what you need to do. So in this step, basically what will happen, I will explain. Then I'll show you how to access the object. So as you know, in this step, it will create object. It will create objects, right? In this step, it will load your XML file and it will start creating objects for whatever number of beans you created, configured here. Consider you configured A to O classes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, number of classes you created here. So what it will do for all these classes, Spring will create object. If you configure all these classes here in your beans XML file, if you configure all these classes here as a beans, what it will do when you load this XML here, it will create objects for A class, B class, C class, D class. For all your classes, it will create. Where it will store that objects. As you know, objects generally will store it into JVM heap memory only. So your objects will be created into heap memory. Your objects will be created into your JVM. All the objects in your JVM heap memory, it will create all the objects. Heap memory. It will create all the objects in the heap memory. So A class object, B class object, C object, D object, all the objects will be created here in your JVM. So though you created objects through framework also, finally they are going to hold on JVM only. Okay. So your JVM only need to hold all these objects. A class to O class. Okay, whatever number of classes you have. For all your classes, objects will be created in JVM. A class object, B class object, C object, right? D object. Okay, you must be aware of all this. Okay, be patient. Why I'm telling it is how you will maintain them. If it is created there, if you want to access, how to access, I'm going to show you. D, C, D, E, F, G, H. Right. You guys following me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So your objects will be created into JVM heap memory. Why in JVM it is creating? Because you are using Java here. Okay. So your container is going to create objects on JVM, all these classes. Finally, use any Java framework. It will create objects on your JVM heap memory only. So this JVM heap memory allocation is on your RAM memory only, system RAM, on your RAM memory only. Finally, where these all are going to run under RAM only. So if your RAM memory is like 1 MB RAM, if you are using to run multiple classes, it may not enough. That's why in servers we use RAMs like 16 GB RAMs or 32 GB RAM, right? So to maintain your JVM heap memory, Finally, heap is existing on RAM only. Okay. Anyways, so all these objects will be created in your JVM heap memory. All these objects are created in your JVM heap memory when you load your XML into application context. So how your application context or how your container will hold that object, how it will get the control on it. You created objects, but if you want to play with these objects, how it will hold them. So when you create objects, right? When you create all these objects ID references will maintain under JVM context, not JVM, your Spring context. Okay. So Spring will maintain one context object. Which context? Application context only. Spring will maintain one context object. Okay. This context object will hold all these references. Your A class reference, B class reference, C class reference, all these classes references will be hold on your context area only. all these objects will be hold on your context object on it. Your context object is going to hold all these objects. How it will hold all these objects? By using that class's references. Okay, for all these classes you will create one reference, right? What is the reference? ID. While configuring this bean class, you need to configure one ID also for each bean. How you configure it? Let me show you here. So I created a bean class. When I want to call this bean class, how I can call? To call your bean class, you need to create an ID now here. You need to create an ID here. ID reference. Okay, unique reference name. Any name you can put here. For A class A, for B class B, or A reference, B reference, whatever ID you want to put it. Okay, but that should be unique. Okay, all your classes IDs will be maintained under this context only. Let's say you have A class. For A class, if you have ID A, that ID will be maintained here. A ID, B ID, C class ID, or D class ID, E class ID, G, H, I, J, K, whatever number of classes you have, right? For all that classes, IDs, it will be maintained here. It will maintain all that IDs here. Okay, it will maintain all that IDs in your context area. It will maintain all your IDs in context area. So whenever you need that particular class object, which is created under JVM, right? Whenever you want that particular class object, you can ask this application context. You can ask this context to give me a class object. As you have references, right? A, B, C, D references. You can use these references from your context. Okay, context will remember all these references. A to Z, whatever classes you have, right? Will remember all that references. You can use this reference to get the object. How you will call it? There is a method on this application context. Okay, what is the method name? There is a method name called application context. Your context class reference you need to call here dot, and you are trying to getting this object. How you will get that object? There is a method name called getBean. There is a method name called getBean. Under this getBean method, you need to pass your ID. Do you want A object? Pass A class ID here. Do you want B class object? Pass B class ID here. So this is how you need to pass your IDs here. If you want A class object, B class object, whatever class object you want, right? Put all that classes references here so that it can able to give you the objects which are created in your JVM. Who created them? Your context only. Context will create all that objects and it will keep their references with it so that you can use that references to get your objects. Using getBean, you can get objects of your classes. Clear? Guys, so far clear what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is how it will give you an object, whatever created in your heap memory. Okay. So this is how it will register it. You can call it as context registry. You can call it as context registry for our understanding sake, right? Registering. Context registry. It is a registry. Under that registry, it will maintain all your object IDs, not your objects. Object IDs it will maintain. Object IDs it will maintain so that you can use that object ID to get your object. You can use this object ID to get your object. Okay, you can use this object ID to get your object. Now see, I have a class and this A class is having a ID A. So if you want A class object which is created, you can call your application context to dot the method name get bean. Here you can give the ID of your bean here, A class ID. Okay, as we have only A class, and give the ID, whatever same ID we have in Excel. So that what it will return you your A class object in the form of object. Object is the parent class for all the classes. Whatever class you see in Java or in any other framework, okay, anywhere in the world, all the classes are childs for object class only. So whatever class you implemented or predefined class objects, if you pass that class object ID here, whatever you configured here, it will give you that class object in the form of object class reference. So don't worry, if you get into on the form of object class reference, you need to typecast it into your A class. So this is how you need to get your object. You need to typecast and you need to get. Then you got your object here. You got your object here. If your class is having any method, you can call it. So if you have any method, public void method1, method2, any number of methods you can have here. You can call that methods. As you got the object, you can call your methods. Okay. Hello from method1. Method2. Hello from method3. So if you want to call these methods, you can call them. As you got your object, right? Once you got the object reference, call your methods. Method1 you can execute, your method2 you can execute, method3 you can execute, right? As you have object, you can call your methods. So this is how it will create object, then followed by getting that object class reference, whatever object created, right? Getting that object reference, we are able to calling the methods. So how it is providing this, when I call this reference A, as while loading your XML itself, it is created a class object. That object will register with this ID in your context area, so that when you call with that ID, whatever object is created will be provided to you. It will provided to you. It will be provided to you. So though you are trying to requesting for your object, if you see here, we are trying to getting a bean here. Let ask this bean for multiple times. Try to ask for your object multiple times. So you are saying, I need a object of A class. I need a object of A class. Again, I'm saying need a object of A class. 4 times I'm asking, give me an object of A class. So as I'm calling 4 times here, how many objects it need to create? As per this diagram, how many objects it will create? Any guess? Tell me, as you are not aware.
I think they will be all pointing to one.
Sorry?
I think they all will be pointing to one object.
Same reference.
Yeah.
Is that one you want to say? Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So as all these references are pointing to same A reference we are using, right? All these references, same A reference is pointing to A class only. So whatever object is created here, right? That same object it will maintain. It will not kill your object. You know the garbage collection, right? So tell me when this garbage collection is happened. Which objects will be collected into the garbage? Will this A class object is going to collect by garbage collector? Garbage collection? Is it going to delete it from your heap? Somehow it need to erase your object, right? Garbage collection need to happen, right? Okay, we'll talk about it. So as you said, it's true that we are trying to calling same reference for 4 times. Though you call 4 times or 100 times, It is not going to create new object for you. It is just giving you object. Okay, so you call for 4 times or 10 times also, what it is going to do, the same object which is created on line number 12, during line number 12 execution, it will create your objects. Only one object it will be created. Why it will create unnecessarily multiple objects when you load your XML? Only one object only it will create it. Then when you call this getBean method 100 times also using your class reference, it will give you same object from JVM. It will give the same object from JVM. Okay, same object it will return to you. Here I want to tell you one thing. As we are not going to use main method in real time, okay, as we are not going to run this code in real time under main method, you know the main method lifecycle, right? It will start from line number 10. From line number 10 it will start and it will end by line number 23. After that your application is going to shut down, correct? Main method execution will start from this line to this line, correct? So once after execution your application is going to shut down. See this, my application started, see here red color button came, right? And automatically it shut down. Your JDK started and shut down your application. Main method started and execution completed and it closed. Main method is terminated because when it reaches to line number 23, your application is going to shut down it. But in real time, right? This context object will be created in a Tomcat, right? Through Tomcat, this object is going to create it. Until unless you shut down your application, it is not going to reach. It is not going to reach end. Okay, so this object will be created. This object will be created once when you start your Tomcat, and it will shut down when you shut down your Tomcat. Until unless you shut down, this object will not go to garbage collection. If application context object is not going to collect by garbage collector, it will maintain this objects permanently. Until unless you shut down your application, your objects will be maintained in it. Getting right what I'm saying? This application context object will be put under application servlet init method. There would be a servlet init method will load it. Servlet init method will load it. Servlet init method will load it so that this object will not be destroyed until you shut down your Tomcat. This is what in servlets it used to happen. So if you doesn't shut down your application context, what that means is it is not going to kill your objects also. Whatever objects you created in JVM, right? All that objects it will maintain until you shut down. Until you shut down this application context object, it will not kill your objects. It will maintain that objects for lifetime. That's why in Spring what we say is, whatever objects are created here, we call them singletons by default. All the objects are singletons. The reason is your application context is not going to delete. Your application context is not going to delete until you shut down your server. When you shut down your server, then this context object is going to close. So if this context object is not closed, means whatever all the beans references you have here, all that beans objects will be maintained until you shut down your context object. That's why we call, if you maintain any object throughout the application, right? If you maintain this object throughout the application, only one single object, then you can say that object as a singleton object. Okay, so whatever number of classes you implement for your application, right? For all that classes, only once objects will be created. Only once objects will be created. They will not be destroyed until you shut down your application. I'll show you this through servlet application. Okay, I'll show you this through servlet application, a sample servlet application. Okay, basically what you need to understand is this application context object will end by this line number 25 as it is in main method. But if it is in servlets, under servlet init method, we initialize this object, and this object is going to destroy from the destroy method. We'll have a destroy method. Under the destroy method, we put this application context object close. Application context dot close. When we call close, then it will shut down it. Okay, so keep remember it. So this application context object will be created only once when you really start your web application or any enterprise application through Tomcat, right? As I said, Tomcat is required to start your IOC in the beginning itself, right? So as I told you, whatever number of classes you implement for your controllers, business classes, BAOs using Spring modules, by using Spring modules, finally you are going to run on your Spring containers only. This Spring container is going to start from your Tomcat init method. So that init method will not close until you call the shutdown of your Tomcat. Init method close operations we do from destroy method. Time being considered. This is like init method and destroy method. We don't have any option. Okay, we'll show you about it this close later. Okay, you need to assume it. So if you assume that, then you can realize it. Application context object will be created only once during your application startup, so that whatever XML file you loaded, all that XML file classes will be created only once in your JVM, only we create only once. Okay, only once all your classes objects will be created in a JVM heap memory, so that we call them singletons. So that by default we call them singletons. It will maintain these objects until you shut down your application. All your classes objects will be maintained as singletons only. Okay, it will maintain as singletons only. So we started discussion about both the containers, right? We started discussion about both the containers. So as we have two containers, application context and bean factory. As I told you, we have two containers, bean factory and application context. Bean factory is a very basic container, core container we call, and this is the advanced container. We can call it as J2EE container. We call this one as a core container, and we call this one as a J2EE container. We call this one as a J2EE container, core container and J2EE container. Okay, so J2EE container only we use in real time, not the core container. This is the basic container. Initially, when they started with this framework, they designed it, but later they given very advanced containers and we stopped using it. I don't know whoever used it, but in the initial framework design, they used it. Okay, so how you will use that? So here you can download these examples, right? As I provided you link. So you go to our blog. There I have given all the examples. Go and download this first example. You can see the core container example. So as second example already we have done here, right? So the same thing, you download and see it. So if you download this, you will get a download, extract it. Extract all. Okay. Download example, extract it. So the only change that we do is main method. So see how we implemented a main method here. This is for core content. So we use these two lines of code. By using XML bean factory, we created it. Let us see that as well. Okay, here we used the application context, right? I'll create one more main method here. Okay, core main. Public static void main. Load your class into core container and see how it will behave. import resources, class path resource. Okay. The first line, what we are doing it is, we are reading our XML file. Okay. So XML file name is spring-config XML file. So spring-config XML file. This is the right path, right? So use this path here. Use the path here. So we are reading our XML file first using resource. Then we are loading that resource here. Anyway, finally, we are trying to loading our XML file into XML bean factory. Okay. Let's start it. What we understand from the J2EE container is, whenever we load this, it is going to create all your objects. It is going to create all your objects. What we understand from the example is, it is going to create all your objects. Whatever classes you configured in your XML file, all the objects are going to create during loading time only, we understand. So is my understanding is correct or not? Run it. I can't see the A class constructor is executed. Same A class I have here. So this statement should be executed. If this object create means the constructor code should be executed, but that is not happened. Because this bean factory is a core container. This core container will not create object until unless you ask the context. Here also we have the factory context, right? Using this reference, you need to ask. So when you ask first time, then only it will create object. So here these objects are created during loading time only. So during loading time only, all these objects are created here. All these objects are created during loading time only. But in bean factory, it will not create loading time. In bean factory, if you consider this is loading into bean factory, if you consider the same thing, if you consider the same thing with bean factory, when you load your XML file here using the statements, when you load your XML file here, so the same XML, right? Here I have the XML. So the same XML file, if I load here, the same XML file, if I load here, I need to read resource. That resource I need to pass here. So whenever you load it, it is not going to create objects. These objects will not create. When these objects will create, one by one, these objects will be created when you call your factory. So this is the bean factory context. So the factory context. Bean factory also will maintain the context with your IDs A, B, C, D, E, F. With all your classes references, it will maintain the context. But it is not going to create object. It is not going to create object. Whenever you call getBean method, right? Whenever you call getBean method on A, then it will create A class object. Then it will create object here. So the object creation will happen in a reverse way. You need to call your factory reference factory dot getBean, the same method. Use the getBean same method. Factory reference dot getBean of A. When you pass the A reference here, then it will ask, factory will check JVM. No, there is no object. Then what it will do? It will start creating object. When you call B, then again it will check. No, there is no B object. Then it will create an object. So that is how, in a lazy manner, it will create your objects. It is not going to create all these objects during loading time. Instead of during loading time, it will create objects when you call getBean method. When you call getBean method of A, then it will create A class object. What if I call the same context using the same factory context? If I try to call this getBean multiple times, now tell me how many objects will create? Any
3
guess?
objects.
Quite so.
Maybe we did not define any singleton.
Sorry.
Maybe we did not define singleton in the Spring config.
Yeah. So that is fine. But from this one, right, you need to understand it will maintain only one context. Even in application context, along with your objects, it will maintain a context, I'm saying, right? So in your context, when you use this A reference, okay, so for this A reference, only one object it will create by default. That too, it will create during first time call. If it is a core container, when you call first time, it will create object. Thereafter, if you try to call the same reference multiple times, it is not going to create object. Whatever object it will create here, right? Again, it will keep that object in the same place. It is not going to remove it. Okay. So in both the scenarios, one object only will be maintained until unless you shut down your context. Either it is a factory context or application context. But the only difference is the object, first time object creation will happen during loading time of your XML. If it is a J2EE container or your application context, during loading of your XML itself, all your ABCD classes objects will be created. And that object references will maintain under context area. But when it comes to the bean factory, when you call the getBean method, then it will create this object. And when you call getBean method of B, then only this B object will create. Otherwise, this objects even will not exist in your JVM. It will not create any objects in your JVM until unless you call getBean method. It is not going to create any object. As I called a class object, it will create a object here. It will keep that a object there itself. It will not remove it. For the further actions, if you try to use this a object again and again 100 times or million times, usually real-time applications will get millions of requests. Even if you get 10 millions requests to your context also, it will use the same object, whatever created at first time call. Same thing here also. Whatever object you created during first time loading, that object only it will return to you. Even if you call this getBean A 100 times also, it will return you same object. But the only difference is for all your ABCD classes, A to L, consider A to L classes I have, all that objects will be created when you load your XML only. But here, each object will be created on demand. When you demand for that object, then it will create. Otherwise, it will not create.
So can we control that one? For application context, can we configure like it should work as same as bean factory?
Maybe lazy bean initialization we can configure, but that is not recommended. Okay, we'll talk about it, why it is not recommended. Okay, so during loading time of your XML, it is not creating beans. XML bean factory, during loading time of XML, it is not creating objects. Whenever you call that particular reference, then it will start creating objects. Whatever object it will create, right, it will maintain that object again for lifetime until unless you shut down your application. This object, whichever is created, not going to delete it from your JV until unless you shut down your application. Okay, this is the primary difference that you need to understand. Only for interview's sake, we are not going to use this bean factory anywhere. Okay. So now, as this object is not created while loading time, as I cannot able to see the A class constructor executed, now I will request to my factory, please give me A class object. Using getBean method, I'll request. Please give me A class object. Then it will consider. Okay, you need an object. Let me create. It is creating for you a object. A class object is created. As I said, right, even if you call this for thereafter, if you call it for 100 times also, it is not going to create new object. See, only one time your constructor executed, not more than that, because only one object created. Is it really created on object? Do you want to prove that? Yes. Let me prove it. Get A1, A2. How you will compare multiple objects if you want to know whether that objects are equal or not? Do you have any technique? How to know objects are same objects or different objects?
Hash code.
Correct. So let me print a hash code for each of this class. A1 dot hash code. I don't have hash code method in A1 class, but how it is coming from its parent class coming. In A class, I have method 1, method 2, method 3 only. You might ask me why you are calling hash code method. It is not there. It is there from your object class, which is parent for your A class. Okay, I'm trying to getting this object hash code. Try to print all 5 objects hash codes here. A2 object, A3 object, A4, A5. Am I going to see different hash codes or same hash codes? If it is the same object, you need to see the same hash. So what it is saying to you is, you are trying to calling the same object. You are getting the same object. Call 100 times, million times. You will be getting the same object which is created at first time call. So here during first time call object is creating, whereas in application context, while loading time itself. If you want to clearly observe that, let me put some line here. So as I said, right, your constructor should be executed before this line. As I'm using here J2EE container. Put the same line here in core container. What I'm saying is, before this line object will not created in bean factor. But whereas in application context, it will happen. Before this line itself, while loading itself, it will create. See the difference. So here also you can compare these objects if you want. Okay, compare all the objects. So you can directly typecast if you want. Okay, A1, A2, A3, A4. Even by using application context also, trying to getting multiple objects, and I'll compare them. A1 method, A1 method. Okay, try to call hash code A1 dot hash code, A2 hash code, A3 hash code. What I'm saying is your constructor will be executed before this statement. That means while loading time of your XML itself, your A class object is going to create. See, before this underline itself, A constructor executed, which means while loading time only created. And all the hash codes are same because only one object created. The proof is only one time constructor is called. So as you are returning same object every time, same hash code you can see. Same thing if you run in bean factory. Before line, nothing happened. After line only, when we call first time get bean method, when we call first time get bean method, then it is creating a class object. So again, to see this, put one more line here. So this is before get bean. See, after get bean. After get bean. I'm adding one more line after get bean. To prove that this object is creating only on this first call. Try to put this after get bean multiple times. After get bean of A1, after get bean of A2, why I want to put this is, if it is going to create a brand new object, after every this line, you need to see one more new object. A4, A5. Next. So same thing apply here. Same thing apply here. Before get bin of A, after get bin of A. A1, A2. A3 and A4. Excuse me. Okay. Now run it. Just a minute. Yeah. Okay. My voice is back. Run it. See this. A class constructor is executed before I'm calling A1 only. So when I call A1, it is not created. Even before it is created. So before A1 call only it is created. So after A1, after A2, after A3, I'm not seeing any object which is creating, because it will create during loading time only. Okay. So just keep this output. Okay. So I'm putting this output here. Now run your core also. Run your core container also. See here. Before A1 bean, object is not created. But whenever you call getBean method, then actually object is created. Then thereafter it is not created even new bean. Say bean it is using. Okay. So in core container, the object is going to create on first time getBean call only. Thereafter it will not create any object. See this difference now. You see the output difference now here and here. You can easily understand. See this from here. A constructor is calling before calling A1 itself. But here A constructor called before A1 state, which means when you call getBean method, actually object is created. But that is not the case with application context. First only your object will create. Thereafter, if you call any number of times also, same object will be returned. So that's the only reason we call it as singleton. That's the only reason we call it as singleton. Only one object will be created throughout the context. So that we are proving it with hash code also. Okay. That is the first and major difference between these both containers. We are not going to use this concept anywhere, okay? We mostly create objects during loading time only. We mostly create objects during loading time only. On demand, we will not create objects. During loading time only we create. That is the recommended approach. So that we can understand at least while starting up your application itself, if it creates all the objects, your user need not to wait until it create a object. Let's say sometimes your classes might have a lot of configurations. They might take a lot of time to create the object. As a user, as a prime customer, you came to this application and you try to do some bill payment. Then we try to start creating objects and infrastructure. If it is going to take a long time, what you will do? You are not going to visit that application again, as it is taking a long time. So that's why in most of the cases, what we do, we create all the infrastructure before users request itself. We prepare everything, right? We prepare everything and we will wait for customers. When customers request is, we will provide the already created object instead of creating a brand new object. The same object will serve for n number of customers. N number of users request also, we maintain only one single object. One single object is enough. Okay, I'll tell you why one is enough. Okay, and I'll show you when you should go with prototype for every call when you need to create a brand new object. Okay, we'll do that discussion tomorrow. So far you are clear, right? Guys, following me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So far we are clear, right?
Yes, sir.
So only for these concepts, okay, container concepts, let me try to explain you, up to this level, so that you will not have any confusions while implementing large applications, how objects are creating, how they are maintaining. Okay, you should not have that confusions thereafter. So once we finish it, then we will be getting much clarity on it, how objects are creating and how many objects are maintaining it. Okay, so yeah, tomorrow I'll show you the importance of singleton, why singleton is enough. Okay, we'll discuss that.
Sir, hello, sir. Yogesh here.
Yes.
I have some doubts in the previous lectures. Sir, means the basic things we need that we have latest versions of Eclipse ID and all these things.
Download latest Eclipse, latest Java.
I have tried that our previously Spring XML file na, and these jar files also download, but they are after downloading in the laptop they will act as a rar files, and there is no option for exporting and all these things.
If it is a rar file, you need to use WinRAR. It is a zip file, yeah. Download and install WinRAR. Because actually I converted all these files as RAR files. That's a bad thing that I did. If it is a zip file, everybody usually
and also, sir,
need not install. Okay, install RAR and extract it. But this is the major concern I'm hearing from you, right? So even previous session also, one guy is asking me how to read the value from RAR. Okay, if I put jar file, zip files, you must be able to extract them. Okay, I'll change them.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes.
Sir, today is my first class, and I wanted to know that we will be going to cover any practical real-time projects in this course.
Yeah. After every discussion, right? Let me show you. After this discussion, after Spring Framework discussion, I'll show you MVC project, boot project, microservices projects.
So are these means any end-to-end application we are going to cover?
End-to-end means the size is small size registration, small size login, a small dashboard, that kind of. Okay, I'm not going to implement a big scope application here, but as we are discussing, right, you will get the idea. Even if you want to create a big scale application also, you can create it.
And sir, with this course, means, what experience means in terms of years, what experience we will get if we complete this course from your
If you want to climb the experience, you can put at least 3 to 4 years.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Still, if you are expert in the industry, already you have expertise in the other domains or other languages.
I don't have any knowledge in means the frameworks like Spring and all that. I just have the basic knowledge of Java. But
So you have been in this IT from
2021.
So you are in IT from 21 only.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So for you will get up to 3+ years of understanding. See, even if you understand all the topics what I am telling you, the realization you will get, more and more when you do the practice, more and more when you utilize it. Even today, as I traveled almost 12+ years, every day I used to realize the topic in a different way. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, you will get the complete understanding. Spring is simple. Compare with the other frameworks. It's a simple framework. Even I'm recommending freshers also to learn it. If they're done with CoreJava, freshers also, right? They can join the Spring session directly. No need of other frameworks like Hibernate, Struts, Advanced Java, all that stuff they can put in a bin. Directly they can join to Spring sessions. It's easy to develop any web-based application or microservice application. All the pain framework is taken from Spring Boot, right? All the pain. Here we will have, as a developer, we will have 100% pain, which means everything we need to align as per their framework. When it comes to Spring Boot will take care of everything, configurations.
Okay. Sir, your duration is only for 35 to 40 days. So
45 to 50 days, yeah.
Okay, 45 to 50 days. Okay, sir.
That's a huge time to cover all these topics.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Some yesterday's topic I have concern about doc type definition file, DTD file. I was trying to the XML file. This doc type bin, this how we can get, because I am trying in new Eclipse IDE. There is no such things that.
Okay. I mean, you want to create XML file. After creation of XML file, do you want to put this?
No. I want to create this doc type bin public and Spring all this thing.
Copy paste it. Okay. Download the example and copy paste.
Okay. Means we have to copy paste it.
Yeah, do it. Otherwise, as I said, right, in some of our libraries, you need to, you are going to add libraries, right? Under your libraries only, you can find it. Yesterday, I searched it. Spring Beans, somewhere, right? In Spring Beans or somewhere, it should be there. I forget it actually. Even I am not reading from there. I'm just doing copy paste always. Maybe in Spring Beans, somewhere. We got it. See, all the schemas we have here. So Spring Beans, there is a jar file. Open that jar file. There you can see this Spring schemas, DTDs. All these are schemas, XSDs. So anyway, XSDs we see later. So we should have DTD also.
Sir, tell the procedures how to add these libraries and all these things, because we don't know these basics, so that we can't practice.
No, I told you, right? Do you know Jdbc?
Yes. I mean, not that much in the deep, but
okay. Very basic, right? Tell me, if you want to connect with Archil database, how you will create project as an infrastructure wise?
No, sir, I don't have that much knowledge about Jdbc.
And that is the basic thing, right? You need to create a Java project and you need to add library, your Archil library to your path, right? Let me show you. Okay. So as this recording also will be available by tomorrow, right? So any project, any framework project, any external libraries you want to use, right? Create a project first, a simple Java project, standalone project I'm creating. Okay, create a project, go to file, new Java project, enter your project name here, test project, okay, and keep the Java 1.8 version here. You can see use execution environments. We have many environments up to Java 12. Keep Java 8. Java 8 is enough for us first. Okay, finish it. Just create a project. That's it. Don't do anything.
Okay.
Thereafter, right click on your project. There is an option called build path. Go to build path, configure build path. So when you click configure build path, here you see left side resources, builders, coverage, build path, code style, compiler, editor. We have multiple options. So by default, this Java build path is selected, and by default, libraries will be selected. So you will come to this window. Even if you are not there in that window, go to libraries window. There you have multiple options: add jar, add external jar. So we need to add jars from our downloaded file, right? As you download your file from here, particularly Spring, you download your Spring jar files from here. Whenever you click on it, you will get a download here. So you will get a download here. You just need to go to your download. First time setup, right? Go to downloads and extract it. Yeah, I downloaded this for n number of times. Okay, extract it. Once after extracting it, Spring jar. Extraction. Okay. After extraction, you will get all the jar files. This is okay. So remember this path. Remember the path from your downloads. What you do in build path is click on external jar files. Click on external jar files and go to your path. Put your path here so that you will get all the libraries here. Select all. Do Control A and click on open. All the jar files will be added here. Click on apply and close. That's it. Your library is now available here under reference libraries. This is how you need to add third-party libraries. Even if you want to connect with Archil or Jdbc 14, you need to add. So that jar also added here.
Okay, sir. I know these things, but I have downloaded RAR file, so I am not able to.
That's not my thing. You need to install RAR and extract it.
Okay.
In RAR. Okay. Okay, and this DTD also, right? As I said, download this example, first example, 4 containers. Once downloading it, go to that project and see under resources folder, or else directly import your project, whatever project, right? Directly import for your practice. So just go to file, import existing project into workspace, browse, select your project in downloads. So Spring Core IOC, this is the second example. So select this example, whichever you, okay, already I imported it here. So get that here and click on finish. Once you finish it, right, you will import it here. So if you import it, you can see all the classes which I have implemented. So once after import, as jar files will not available, go to build path, configure build path. Okay. Go to library, add external library, add all your jar files. If you are doing through import. So go and see your class there, whatever class implemented, and go and see the XML file. You can see the DTD, beans, everything, and go to main class and just run it.
Yes, sir. Got it.
Simple. This is how you can make your practice easy. So thereafter, try to create a new project and do the same example once again. Always import the existing project and run it first. Once if it is working for you, right, then start creating a new project once again with a different name and try to create your own class. Instead of test class, you create your own class, best class, and put your best XML file here and load that XML file into your main and see by getting your best class here. Okay, that is the right way to practice our examples.
Sir, in that Spring config.xml, you added DTD manually or by default?
No, you need to add. I created XML file and I copied that. So we don't have any provision to create new Spring XML here. We have only option is file. Choose this option, next, and create your XML file name. You require name.xml. This is how you need to create XML file.
Okay. How will know which DTD to have?
As I'm saying, right, you have in your examples. So go to your downloaded example and go to your resources, open this file and copy it. Or else this DTD is available in jar files also. Spring Beans jar file is contained in this DTDs. It should be there. Let me search. Spring Beans only, right? We open Spring Beans jar file. Out of your jar files, there is a Spring Beans jar file. Spring Beans. Yeah. So under the Spring Beans jar file, there is a DTD file you should see. Beans Annotation Factory, Meta, Spring Handler Schema Tools, Manifest file, no. Index file, no DTD. Schema file is having XSD. Tooling, no DTD. In overview also no DTD. Somewhere in this factory XML, see, you have DTD files here. Under Spring Beans, org Spring Framework Beans jar file. Under this package, org.springframework.beans.factory XML. If you open that package, you see all the DTDs. Spring Beans DTD, XSDs, DTDs and XSDs. You find the DTDs here, right? So open this Spring Beans DTD, a basic DTD file. So if you open that file, right, you will see a default DTD here. From line number from line number 36 to 37. Copy this DTD and put in your XML file. Go to your XML file, put the DTD there. See the difference? Earlier I configured 2.0. Now I configured the default DTD. Use anything.
Okay.
So all the DTDs are available there. So if it is a new version DTD, from Spring 3 onwards, they are not recommending DTDs. They go with XSD. So okay, we even use XSD only. DTDs we are not going to use. Okay, just for a few examples I use it.
And here, sir, here we are using these tags, beans and bean. Is there other tags also? And you have used these classes as attribute and ID. Is there new things? Means we don't know about the new things. Only you have told that beans is the main root tag is used.
Only one root tag per XML file. You need not to know about other root tags because there is only one root tag per XML. And coming to this bean tag, this is the important tag. Now we are trying to understanding this bean tag only. To understand this bean tag itself, we are going to spend next 20 days.
Okay.
Okay. Later we will see the other tags. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this is how you can go to this, location and find it and copy it. You must be clear, right? So if not, just refer this video, the last few minutes, 10 minutes, whatever we discussed here, right? The same thing you will find. Anything apart from it? So I have multiple chats. So please share video. Yeah. So the demo videos, right? You must see from this link itself. Let me open.
Share me
Sir, I have one question.
Okay.
Yeah, so this means today we talk about that singleton concept. So it's means that's a default scope of singleton, means bin scope, Spring Bean scope. So this singleton is different, that a design pattern singleton is different, means both are different or similar?
That is different, right?
Yeah.
As I told you, it is not going to follow any pattern. That's why I stressed here. This context object will be in live until you shut down your Tomcat. So if it is in live, as it created object using this reference, right? That object also will be in live. That is a Java fact, not about the Spring. In Java, this is the true statement, right? If I create an object, if that object is referencing any other objects, if associated with that object, if I don't kill the parent object, it is not going to kill its child objects. I mean, associated objects. They also will be in live. Correct?
Okay. Yeah.
That's why I'm saying it is a singleton. Otherwise, Spring not creating it as a singleton.
Okay.
Okay, try to understand my statement.
Yeah.
It is not going to using any singleton design pattern here. You created a simple class. It is creating a simple object. That's it. One time only it will create an object. As only one context object we create for entire application. So this context also will create only one object for your classes. If you try to create multiple context objects, then you can think of it. It will create multiple objects of your classes also. But as a fact, we create only one context object per entire application. That's why your objects also single objects. If I repeat this line for 10 times, what will happen? 10 times context object will be created. If 10 context created, 10 different Java objects also will be created. But this statement is only once will execute per entire application. And this object is not going to shut down. This object is not going to garbage collected, because you will put this statement under servlet init method. If you put something under servlet init method, that is not eligible for garbage collection by default. You need to close on your own by using destroy method.
Yeah.
You got it right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We talk about it, okay? Otherwise, it's not a singleton. As you are creating only one object of your container, it is creating one object for your classes. Yeah, demo videos you can see in this link, okay? Already previous recordings we have. Whatever mail you received right from DURGASOFT, course content demo video, on this link, if you click, you go to this YouTube videos, previous 4 sessions, including yesterday's session also available. On 10th, 11th, 12th, and 3 days we have holidays. 16th session also we have. It's not me, it's AI. Okay. Yeah. So this is the session that we discussed yesterday. Okay, guys. I think we are late. Can you share the screen user guide? Yeah, I'll share the guides also. But whatever statements I'm talking here, I mean, in the document, you will not see all the statements. Basic, what is what I returned, and examples also have to. Okay. So yeah. So always you will receive all my PDFs, right? I mean, my paints, whichever we discussed in the class, right? You will receive them. Regular video also you will receive, including my classroom examples and the blog examples also. Usually, I'll update the blog on regular basis. From there, you can download. Okay, guys. If nothing else, I'll drop for today. Can you share your contact details? My contact is available here. Go to this blog link. This is my number only. You guys can reach out to me anytime. Whatever numbers are scrolling here, right? My numbers only. You can reach out if you have any doubts. Okay, guys, then. Okay. I'll take off for today. We'll connect tomorrow. With more doubts, okay. Good night.
Okay, so good night.